Awesome, thanks so much, Linda Marie. Sounds like a book with a lot of growth possibilities in there and one that's very challenging. So thanks for sharing that so much. Thanks so much for sharing that even. Let's move straight on. Our next speaker today is Kath Warren. You'll find Kath producing programs at Codebase, co-hosting Cultural Mongrels Daily Dancing. My God, did it have to have such a complicated name? And generally championing Edinburgh's creatives. She's previously worked at Creative Edinburgh, EIF, EIBF, and other arts festivals across the UK, and writes sporadically at the Warren and Arts and Culture site. I'm a massive advocate of feeling better through movement generally. Personally, I run, so I'm super interested to hear Kath's 5 things about how to feel better through dance. Kath, The Dance Cure by Peter Lovett.
Yes, hi everyone, nice to see you. You can go straight on to the next slide if you want, Andy. So, oh, sorry, my calendar's waking up. As am I, so sorry for this if it's so sorry. So yeah, I've spoken about The Dance Cure by Dr. Peter Lovett, which is a book about why we dance and what it does for our bodies, minds, and souls. Peter Lovett is a dancer, an academic, and he founded the Dance Psychology Lab, which explores the science and psychology behind dancing and dancers, and movement more broadly as well, actually. And the book uses case studies and anecdotes and history to delve into movement and what it can do for us. I am not a professional dancer. We chatted about this before, unless like ballet between the ages of 5 and 8 years old counts. Had no training. I'm not a professional dancer. But I am a big dance party advocate. I love a boogie. As Andy said, I'm one of the hosts of Daily Dancing, which is 10 minutes on Zoom at 10 a.m. on a Monday and Friday, designed to bring people together for a dance, just to tackle isolation and create a sense of community. And that was started at the beginning of the pandemic. And when I was on Instagram, I was frequently posting my dance stories. And I'm off Instagram, I just inflict that on friends and family with time lapses of me leaping around my living room. And I just love to dance. It's when I feel most free and joyful and loose, and it's kind of my happiest place. So I don't read loads of nonfiction, so I kind of willingly signed up to this, and then I was like, oh, what book do I talk about? So I kind of went the other way and decided a topic I was really interested in, and then just hoped I'd find a book that fit, and I did. I stumbled across The Dance Cure in Toppings, and it was exactly what I was looking for. So I'm going to share 5 takeaways, which are really just things I thought were really cool and kind of make sense to the way we live and work. Roll on, Andy. Oh, sorry, you're also, each thing is a song title, so feel free to fill a quiz in the chat. And I have made a playlist of all the songs and other songs that are mentioned in the book that are good to dance to, which I'll share at the end. So number 1, the rhythm is going to get you. So if you think about that moment when you hear a song you love and you can't not tap your foot, you can't not like start shaking. I'm not going to dance for you today, just to warn you. And it kind of takes over you. That rhythm is instinctual to us as humans. And Peter Lovett actually talks about the song I Feel Love by Donna Summer, and how when he hears that, it's like the music becomes a puppeteer. He can't not move bits of his body and start to move to the rhythm. And they talk about within the book a study that looked at the electrical activity of babies and in their brains when they're hearing rhythm. So they got a load of babies and they played them a load of drum and bass, which I think is quite a fun image. And whether they were awake or asleep, their babies' brains went wild for it. They could hear the rhythm, they could sense it was happening. And they then removed beats from the music to take out that rhythmicness, and actually found that babies' brains still reacted. They could sense something was missing. They could sense that this wasn't a steady rhythm anymore. And this was in babies as young as 2 days old. And this shows that we are born with rhythm. It is innate to us. It's something we are born with. I'm actually more interested in the why. Like, I think obviously speech and language, rhythm helps with that, but I'm curious if there's some sort of like evolutionary reason behind this, which I couldn't find. But that brings me quite nicely onto the next point. You Can't Mistake My Biology. It's a really cheesy song, if anyone knows that one. Because something I'm really interested in is how dance can kind of be explained and connected back to core human instincts and needs. And as you can imagine, a lot of movement and dance is about social connection. And there's loads of examples. I'm just picking on like 2 or 3 examples of many within this book in each point here. But things like synchronizing our movement creates positive feelings towards one another. So even if you just walk in step with someone, that's going to increase the connection between you. The same way with group dancing. Some of this feels quite kind of obvious, but they did an experiment where they had a group of people in a room together but dancing individually versus in a room together and dancing together. And of course this increased social bonding, but actually what they found is that the group who had been dancing together, afterwards they suffered with less pain from a pain test. They had higher tolerance. So there's this really kind of deep ability for our bodies to build these connections that then actually impact the way we feel pain or other kind of really significant things that impact our bodies. And in the same way that animals use mating rituals, things that we would maybe look at a bird and say that bird's dancing, and they use this as a mating ritual, our human bodies have kind of deep biological responses. So they looked at women who were at their most fertile of their monthly cycle rather than of their whole life, and found that at the most fertile periods of the month, women tended to dance with their hips more in isolation. But at other times of the month, they would be moving their arms and their heads and their feet and kind of getting everything involved. And they also did a study with lap dancers, and they found that the lap dancers, again, who are at their most fertile, would receive higher tips than those who weren't. And I think these are just all really cool examples of how movement and dancing connects to really deep biological things that have obviously been evolving over years and years. And if that's cool and interesting to you, I'd really recommend the book that's on the screen right now, Sarah Pascoe, the autobiography of the female body. It has loads of incredible things that make you go, oh, that's why we feel this when we're in a relationship, or oh, that's why our bodies respond this way in this situation. It's particularly for the female body. Okay, next point. Sorry, this is just a ramble of things I found pretty cool, basically, at this point. You went to school to learn, girls. So Peter Lovett speaks a lot in the book about his own experience. So he grew up with dyslexia. He was unable to sit still in the classroom, and he ultimately graduated without qualifications, but went on to study and perform as a dancer for many years. And in his 20s, when he kind of felt like he was missing out and wanted to go back into education and start a kind of academic career, this is something he'd grown really interested in with the people he was surrounded by. He kind of felt like he didn't have the techniques to be able to learn in this way because of his experience with school. But what he started to recognize is that he'd spent years watching dancers, trying to remember routines or trying to get moves down, and then watching them find a different way of getting it into their brains if something wasn't working. And he recognized that he'd been using this to digest information too. So breaking things into smaller chunks, layering it up, rooting it to memory, and ultimately having kind of patience in that whole process. So he applied all this to his academic learning and now has degrees in English, psychology, neurocomputation. He's worked as an academic for many years. He runs a lab which conducts studies on psychology. And then towards the end of the book, he writes his wishes for the future. And his final one is that the role of movement in enhancing human experience is universally recognized. And I just thought this was a really incredible point about, imagine if, children in schools weren't told they have to sit still and stop fidgeting, or the revision techniques we were taught weren't all flashcard based, or if we were just kind of more actively encouraged to dance more or move more or express ourselves more and in different ways, kind of what that could unlock, especially in the people who are neurodiverse or who learn and who don't already. I'm like spinning around sitting here. I started the event sat on like a still chair and I felt really restricted and uncomfortable. So there's such power in movement to unlock the way our brains work and digest. And again, that brings me nicely onto my next point. Let me blow your mind, which is all about our brains. So dancing activates loads of our brains. It strengthens processes like problem solving, memory, and creativity. And there's a really cool study in this about stationary poses. So I don't know if anyone's ever before an interview done the whole like Superman pose, where you put your hands on your hips, you stand with your legs wide and you puff your chest out, and it makes you feel stronger and more powerful and more in control. So if you're going into an interview or something, it gives you a new level of confidence. And they looked at this in a study and actually found that not only did it improve our perception of ourselves, but it actually changed the hormonal state of our bodies. So They looked at testosterone and cortisol, which are the hormones that impact our kind of risk-taking and found that those hormones, sorry, that's another word I was looking for, actually changed the whole makeup of the hormones in our bodies at that moment, just through the course of doing those sorts of and these are stationary poses, not even movements. And there was also a study that looked at people, patients living with Parkinson's, and found that after 10 sessions of dancing, there was a host of kind of improvements and impact on their health. So their physical processes were faster, they were experiencing less bodily discomfort, they were thinking more creatively, their mood was improved, they were moving with more vigor, and then feelings of depression, anger, and tension had all been reduced. And so I think they're both just really amazing examples of how it might not be a cure to these sorts of conditions, but if you're living with, you know, bad mental health or life-changing conditions like Parkinson's, there's actually real power in dance to unlock parts of your brain and strengthen parts of your brain that might otherwise be suffering. So I think many of us probably think of dance as, oh, I want to feel better, so I'll have a quick boogie, but think there's a lot of the power, there is a lot of power to extend that out more broadly into how our brains think and work. And then my final point, number 5, I don't feel like dancing. I was really interested in this one as someone who will see an empty dance floor and will happily get it started. I'm always really curious about people who don't feel that. What is it that stops people not wanting to dance? If kind of rhythm is innate to us and we have had these evolutionary processes telling us that movement and dancing is going to help us or help us connect with people, what is it that stops people? And there's a host of different reasons. So self-esteem, hormonal changes, both for kind of teenagers, but also during menopause, a lack of reason to dance. So a lot of people will dance as a way to attract someone or impress someone. And then once they've got that person, they're kind of like, what's the point anymore? Which is really sad. If any of you are doing that, please have a boogie for the sake of it. And then vulnerability in your body and in your mind. So there is loads of reasons. There's not one concrete reason why people, there is actually also a specific fear, like an extreme fear of dancing, which I didn't talk about, but it's quite interesting. But one particular point I kind of wanted to end on here was about, there was a study they conducted in Greece where they got a load of middle-aged men who had experienced chronic heart failure, and they placed them into groups. So one of the groups were told to go to the gym lots over 8 months, and one of them were told to do lots of Greek dancing. And 8 months later, the gym goers had mostly given up going and showed no improvement to their health, whereas the dancers were still going strong. They were loving it, and they'd shown huge cardiovascular improvements. And the difference here is this intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, which I'm sure a lot of us have thought about or had experience with. The dancers continued because they loved it, they were excited by it, they were motivated by it, not because the researchers told them to. Whereas the gym goers, even though they were being told to, quit because they were bored and they lost motivation in what they were doing. And like, I know I signed up to dance-based classes just last month. And every week I look at the schedule and I book my load of classes in, and I'm really excited to go, and I'm turning down the pub for it, and I'm walking 45 minutes in the other directions for it. And it's like a huge source of pleasure. And it's really shed that narrative that I had in my head around movement and exercise of, oh, I should run now, or I should probably do something to do this or that to my body. So whether it's dance or another sort of movement, like Andy, you said running is your thing. It's finding that thing that intrinsically motivates you, that excites you and makes you want to move your body in a certain way. Hopefully, ultimately, is going to make you healthier and happier. And then, yeah, so to wrap up, rhythm, we are born with it. I won't go any more into that one. Biology, dance and movement connect deeply to like processes that have been